An internal party review has found that senior figures within Fianna Fáil were aware of a potential issue involving former general election candidate Jim Gavin weeks before he was officially selected, yet no further action was taken at the time. The controversy later forced the former Dublin senior football manager to withdraw from the campaign just 10 days before polling, and the review is now calling for much stricter vetting of future candidates. The Meelick Fianna Fáil TD, Cathal Crowe, joins us on the line now. Good morning to you, Cathal.
Good morning, Alan. Happy Christmas to you.
Happy Christmas to you too. I'm sure that
easy on me after that.
this isn't exactly full of the festive spirit, but it is a necessary chat nonetheless. The meeting last night, Cathal, described it's quite lengthy and by all accounts quite fraught. Several TDs and senators accusing Micheál Martin of sidelining the parliamentary party and selecting Jim Gavin. What do you make of that criticism?
Look, so the meeting went on. It lasted for almost 5 hours, which was excessively long. I mean, we had one point to discuss, but having said that, there are a lot of members there. We are the largest political party in Ireland. There was about 70 people in the room, so everyone wanted to have a say, and rightly so. Look, the feeling from the grassroots up, and both Timmy Dooley and I have met with nearly every element of the organisation now in Clare at this stage in recent weeks, and there's a lot of hurt and anger, and that is felt not just at local level, but all the way up through the elected members. So we had that meeting last night, and you'd a whole range of views. You'd moderate views. You'd people who wanted to analyse the report, and it was 25 pages in length. You'd people, I suppose, who see the worst of practice and bad practice in this, and you've others who are quite forgiving and just want to move on. I'm pretty much one of those who, and I'm happy to talk through what I questioned last night, but I asked many questions, and I did so on behalf of Clare Fianna Fáil members, but I'm very much one of those who now believes that, we move on from this. There's a huge amount of work. I know just before we've gone on air, Alan, you were talking about UHL Hospital. I'm far more focused on the hospital, the airport, stuff in the county. And I think really as a party, we need to now do a reset over Christmas, come back in the new year and deal with policy stuff and all of the stuff we're good at.
And I can understand why, and I can understand why you would want to focus on those, because in the grand scheme of things, those are hugely important matters, particularly just here in the Midwest, as you've alluded to. We were discussing that earlier on. I will ask you about that before we finish. But the future of your party leader, and who is currently the Taoiseach, is of course of enormous interest to not just our party members but the public, and particularly when the review shows Jim Gavin was asked 5 times about a potential tenant dispute, including twice before his nomination, yet nothing further was done. I'm just wondering, how does that happen in what the party insists was an exhaustive due diligence process, and what do you make of Jim Gavin being nominated without any polling data and after just one meeting with the party leader?
Yeah, well, I think the blame lies on many people's shoulders, and I'm one of those who's accepting some blame here. I think we all have to step up here as well. Anyone who serves in elected office is a leader of sorts, and I have a leadership role in Fianna Fáil and Clare as well. And I was, I think, one of the first in the whole country to sign a nomination form for Jim Gavin. The Taoiseach, and about a dozen other people felt that of anyone presenting, and now this was a very high calibre list of people. Billy Kelleher, a superb MEP, Bertie Ahern, former Taoiseach, Mary Hannafin, Bob Geldof's name was even in circulation at that point, some really high calibre people. I felt of all candidates presenting that Jim Gavin was by far the one that would probably get the most votes. He'd be very respectable. He would pull a vote beyond Fianna Fáil, and that was essential because there was a little bit of polling done, I can tell you, not specifically on Jim Gavin, but any polling we did, and these results were presented to us last night, any polling Fianna Fáil did in the lead up to the presidential election suggested that only 1 or 2 candidates had an appeal beyond the Fianna Fáil vote base.
But Cathal, just on that, shouldn't specific polling have been done on Jim Gavin himself, particularly when he's a greenhorn in political terms?
Yeah, I think that was the general consensus, exactly as you said, as we left last night. We've learned huge lessons. I mean, it's a very steep learning curve from this process. We should have done better polling. The only polling I saw presented last night was that we were struggling to get support beyond the Fianna Fáil base. Now, the Fianna Fáil base in Clare is quite strong. It's about 33% of the vote. But go up to Dublin, Fianna Fáil vote is probably about 14-15%. So we were in trouble here if we didn't pick a candidate who had appeal beyond the party. So there's, I suppose, the logic behind selecting Jim Gavin. He was from the capital. He had mass appeal, and it was all going well. Indeed, I think I mentioned on your show a few weeks ago, in the first 2 weeks of this campaign, Paddy Power, Boyle Sports had them installed as the red hot favourite. That was before things unravelled, and that's a whole other thing. But we felt early on we had gotten things right, and then it all started to unravel.
And you said, Cathal, that you feel it isn't just down to Micheál Martin, that there's blame to be put on the shoulders of a number of people within the party. However, his critics would say his personal imprimatur on Jim Gavin had the effect of short-circuiting the normal checks and balances. Does the buck ultimately stop with the party leader, and particularly when senior party figures as well were warned that any disgruntled tenant would likely go public, and given that warning, why wasn't that issue treated as a red flag?
Yeah, just to continue on the blame game, because we all have to, anyone who would think was involved in this has to shoulder a little bit of the blame. I don't think it all falls on the party leader, but just on the blame in inverted commas, because I still think Jim Gavin has many fine attributes, and I was one of those who signed up to nominate him. But just on that, I think what we saw last night in the report was he was asked on 5 separate occasions to clarify this. Now, we're not a police force. We're not the Gestapo. We don't interrogate people. And anyone who goes...
But you do vetting, don't you?
You do vetting. I've been through that. Timmy has been through it. And now it is, granted, it is far more vigorous when you are going for presidential election. But you're asked if you have anything in your background. Are there any legal disputes, litigation? Is there anything pending? Do you owe money to revenue? All of these questions are asked. So specifically, just to get into specifics here, on 5 occasions, the issue of the tenancy was raised, and they were told there was no issue. So, I mean, that it was reconciled. And I think anyone who's listening here this morning wouldn't like that kind of deep digging into your past and everything. I've been through due diligence to go for general election, but I don't think anyone would like that. But indeed, wouldn't someone remember, I'm just being very frank with you here, wouldn't any one of us, you or I, Alan, remember if you were locked into some legal dispute, even if it was years ago, if someone called to your parents' house looking for money that was owed to them, or if you got a solicitor's letter, I would certainly remember that, and I think most people would. So I think the answers that Fianna Fáil head office and the Taoiseach were given across those 5 separate occasions were unsatisfactory, and I think if we'd gotten better, more straightforward answers, I think we could have dealt with this process very early on, moved on to another candidate and ran a different candidate who may very well have won the election.
And so just on Jim Gavin himself...
Just to finish that point, I think some in the room expressed buyer's regret, I think, and that sentiment is very much felt, I think, amongst some Fianna Fáil members. Jim
Gavin himself declined to be interviewed for the review. Cathal, do you feel does that undermine confidence in the findings of this report? Does it leave unanswered questions hanging over the party?
I think he should have engaged with it, because a lot of us members and elected representatives feel a degree of hurt here. I cleared out that entire month. I cancelled family things. A lot of us did this. I was prepared to go up the top of the mountain and down the other side for him and do everything in between to get him elected. We haven't heard anything from him, and I think a lot of us feel disappointed on that front. Disappointed on one level that he didn't engage with the formalities of the review, but also on a less formal level. I think we'd like to have heard from him as well along the way, because we were hugely invested in this campaign and haven't heard a thing from him since. None of us have. He's some fine people. I hope he has a good life. I think he's back working with the Irish Aviation Authority. I think I'll have to meet him in the new year, not wearing the political hat, but this time he'll be wearing the civil aviation hat. And look, life will move on, but certainly I think Fianna Fáil have learned a lot from this. But can I make it unequivocal that I'm supportive of the Taoiseach. He himself has apologised to the party. He's admitted that he and the party and many more with him made errors here, but he's a fine leader, he's a fine statesman, and I think we need to get back to the business of running Ireland and making our country a success. Things are turbulent in the world at the moment. I think we need a stable government.
Do you feel though, Cathal, that kind of holding the hands up and bit of a mea culpa from the Taoiseach will work? Some senior figures describing him as politically wounded, walking on thin ice. Do you think it may come to such a head that he's left with no option but to resign? I understand what you're saying from the point of view of stability, the country and so on, him being currently the Taoiseach as well, but that just matters within your party may come to a head, and he may feel that he is left with no option but to resign. And do you think he should?
He did all the right things yesterday. When you've made an error in politics, and I've done it several times in your show over the years, Alan, when you've done something wrong, or when you've had an error of judgment, you're as well off to own up to it. Rather than double down on your position, own up to it. And he did that last night in front of party members. What he told us in terms of the sequence of things here is so important. There was a 25-page report that, it's very factual, it's very sequential. It explains what happened, how it happened. He's apologised, others have apologised. We had a very good meeting, and do you know what differs us from some other parties in this state is that we're a very open party. So there was anger in the room last night, there was upset, there was very harsh criticism and all of that, but we accept that. We're certainly we're not a military outfit. We don't interrogate or hold our candidates over a barrel. We don't. We allow people to express opinions. We've had all of that. And my sincere hope now is that we move on from this because, like the Taoiseach phoned me yesterday, I have a very good relationship with. He and I had a lengthy chat yesterday about UHL. No mention of Jim Gavin because the one thing I would say is as I circulate throughout the county doing clinics, going into coffee shops, the march last weekend, wherever I go, very few people are talking about Jim Gavin, except for Fianna Fáil people. So sometimes we, as someone said last night, we're going into our centenary year next year, and we're still box office as a party. But I think if you want to be box office as a party, I think you'd be better off going out there on the airwaves, whether it's Clare FM or national media, talking about the good things we're doing rather than the internal fight.
Well, and just on that then, let's finish by talking about the government's approval of the plans to address overcrowding UHL. Sure. A blend of all three options. The Minister saying there's a commitment to secure a site for a new hospital in the Midwest. No doubt you're welcoming this news, but what would you like to see happen next, Cathal, to ensure these plans translate into real improvement for patients? And particularly, we heard from Deirdre Culligan and Hilary Tonge. Hilary Tonge expressed concern that the timeline for the construction of a new hospital could go beyond the 10 to 15 year time frame.
Yeah, so look, this is absolutely seismic and a huge amount of work. I want to acknowledge the Ennis Hospital Committee there. Savage work has gone into this, and I brought them up to meet Taoiseach Minister, and we finally got this outcome. Look, the work starts now because I don't accept 10 or 15 years is in any way viable. I've suggested to figures in government that one of the solutions maybe we should be looking at would be to let this hospital be built privately and maybe leased back to the state. We've all seen out by Ballysimon in Limerick that beautiful new Bonsecure hospital. Its secured planning was built and opened within a 2-year period. I think something like that needs to be looked at. I don't think we need to have this state-centric approach to procurement and delaying things by 10 or 15 years. 10 or 15 years, Alan, we'll all be heading into our older years, but there's many people who won't even have seen a hospital by then because they'll have gone through eternal reward. Healthcare needs a hospital far quicker than that. And I think we've had a great outcome here. And I just have heard some of the political sphere trying to instantly pour cold water on it, that option C, the new hospital, has to happen immediately. I would just remind those people that we haven't even acquired the site yet. I think 2026 is going to bring huge clarity. I've been on the phone to people suggesting County Clare. I know there's Clare sites in consideration. I don't know what form this is going to take, but 2026 is going to be a major year for healthcare. But we're going into this Christmas period with the best outcome we could have from that review.
Okay, and I've no doubt we'll be returning to this in 2026. Cathal, if we're not speaking to you before then, thanks as ever for joining us on the show, and a happy Christmas and relaxing New Year to you, and we'll talk to you in 2026. The Meelick Fianna Fáil TD, Cathal Crowe, there with us on Morning Focus.